A tiny island, once the obsession of entire empires, was traded for a swampy, forgotten outpost. That single transaction, a mere footnote in a dusty treaty, would go on to define the entire modern world.
Look at these two places. On one side, you have a tiny speck of land in the Banda Sea, so small you can barely see it on a map. And on the other, the financial capital of the planet. They feel like they exist in completely different universes, and yet their fates are tangled together in the most ironic way imaginable.
So how in the world does that happen? How does a forgotten spice island become the price tag for the world's capital? To get it, we have to rewind the clock, back to a time when the scent of a single spice drove men to absolute madness and murder. Welcome to Inside History HD, where we dissect the hidden narratives behind the pages of history.
You see, back in the 17th century, the global economy wasn't powered by oil or data. It was driven by the intoxicating smell of one single seed. This thing was more valuable than gold. Every major power coveted it, for its flavor, for its supposed medicinal powers, and of course, for its insane profitability. We're talking about nutmeg.
And here's the crazy part. Because of a geological fluke, the world's entire supply of nutmeg grew on just one tiny cluster of islands, the Banda Islands. This accident of nature made them the dead center of a ferocious global rivalry. If you could control Banda, you controlled a fortune. The whole world economy literally hung on the fate of these few little volcanic specks in a far-off sea.
So who was fighting for it? You had two brand new corporate titans, kind of like the Apple and Google of their day, the English East India Company and the Dutch VOC. And they weren't just competitors, no. They were waging a brutal shadow war for total control of this spice monopoly. They were the world's first multinational corporations, and their business was conquest.
And let's be clear, this wasn't some gentlemanly trade dispute. This was a conflict filled with espionage, shocking violence, and just profound cruelty. And it all came to a head in an event that would poison the relationship between England and the Dutch for decades.
Over on the island of Ambon, Dutch authorities rounded up their English counterparts. The accusation? A plot to seize a fortress. What came next was a total sham, a show trial built entirely on confessions that were extracted through unimaginable pain.
This act of calculated, horrific brutality just shattered any pretense of cooperation. This wasn't a corporate rivalry anymore. The war for the spices had now become a war of nations, and it was setting the stage for a final deal that absolutely no one could have predicted.
So after years of incredibly costly warfare, both sides were exhausted. The two powers finally came to the negotiating table in the Dutch city of Breda, ready to settle their global fights once and for all.
And buried deep within the Treaty of Breda was one of the most lopsided-sounding trades in history. The English agreed to give up their very last claim in the Banda Islands, this tiny place called Pula Run, in exchange for a Dutch colony in North America, a little place called New Amsterdam.
I mean, for the Dutch, this was a masterful victory. They had done it. They had secured a complete and total monopoly on the world's most valuable spice. They thought they had traded away a useless liability for an asset of incalculable worth. Or so they believed.
But history, as we know, has a savage sense of irony. Because in the grand accounting book of empires, the definition of an asset is never permanent. What's priceless in one century can become a forgotten footnote in the next.
Their dream had been realized. The Dutch had achieved total, absolute control. They were standing on top of the world's most profitable market, the undisputed masters of the spice that had driven nations to war. But right at that moment of triumph, something was shifting. An invisible tectonic shift was happening in the very architecture of global power. The future wasn't going to be in spices. It was in ports, in trade routes, in a whole new kind of capital. In the world, it shifted, silently, right beneath their feet.
The value of nutmeg, the very prize they had fought and killed and tortured for, just began to evaporate. Turns out the seeds could be planted somewhere else, breaking the monopoly. And the engine of global commerce, well, it found new fuel: finance, industry, and the strategic value of land.
So the island that was traded away for a spice became the very island that would one day set the price of everything. The English lost the battle for nutmeg, but in losing, they had accidentally stumbled into winning the war for the entire future of the global economy.
Today, if you compare the two islands, it just seems absurd, right? Almost like a joke.
One represents the forgotten wealth of the past, the other, the overwhelming, crushing power of the present. But is financial might, is that really the only way we measure worth?
And right here, the very definition of value gets flipped on its head. The legacy of Pula Run isn't gone, it's just transformed. Its worth isn't measured in money anymore. It's measured in the richness of its reefs, the resilience of its history, and its quiet defiance to the loud logic of the global market.
Think about it. A single, short-sighted decision, based entirely on the logic of its time, created the world that we all now live in. A world built on the ghost of a spice and the concrete of a metropolis.
The story of Run in Manhattan is a stark reminder. The things we decide are priceless today might just be the forgotten, trivial footnotes of tomorrow. If you found this perspective valuable, let's continue digging deeper together with Insight History HD by hitting the subscribe button. I'm host speaker. See you in the next narrative.